Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Just a Person podcast, a show that explores life's highs, lows, and in-betweens. I'm Madison, and this week I sat down with Julia. We talked about what it was like growing up with a dad in the Marines, how she feels about not having a traditional hometown, and different ways her upbringing shaped her. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the episode. Hello, Julia.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being a guest.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
So I'm going to start out with a question, which, if you've listened to this show before, I pull out of the hat, but I actually thought of this question just on my own, and I thought it'd be interesting to ask. So I've been reading this book about this girl that's like on a road trip. It's a real, it's kind of like an autobiography. And she has this whole chapter about snacks. Okay. And the thing about it is that like she thinks you can tell a lot about people by the snacks that they eat when they're on a trip. So my question to you is, what do you eat on a road trip? Or you could do either or. When you're at an airport, what's your restaurant? What's your snack? What are you eating?
Okay. If I'm on a road trip, I like to do one chocolate and one sour candy. So I'll do sour gummy worms and then like either M&Ms or like a Snickers bar or something. And then like a Dr. Pepper. I feel like that's my go-to for like a road trip or like at the airport even. I'll get like Muddy Buddies at the airport.
All right. I would say for me, since I have a lot of dietary restrictions at the airport, I just try to find like Fritos. If I can find Fritos, because I know I can eat them. Because sometimes at airports, they have like the most random brands. You're like, what is this?
Yeah, they have like different. I feel like it's like time to branch out of the airport because there's like new options. So you have to try everything.
Yeah, that's true. And then in a car, once again, dietary restrictions, I can't ever stop anywhere. So I just bring all of the food in my cupboard.
I kind of love that. It's like if you're able to do that in a car, then like why not? I feel like that's what everyone should be doing.
Right. I went recently, like a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't really a big road trip, but it was a trip away from my house. And I brought all my food in 2 bags, and I brought my toaster.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
just bring the whole thing. I bring everything I have with me because you never know what's gonna happen.
Do you use the toaster in the car or do you just have it with you in case you need to like
I wish I could use the toaster in the car.
plug it in?
That'd be awesome. I would use it. I'd make a little peanut butter sandwich right there in the car.
Exactly, a little bagel.
Yeah.
I could be very happy.
I wonder if they have a toaster that you could plug into your car.
I don't know.
It seems kind of dangerous.
I feel like.
Yeah. But anyway, okay. I like that. Sweets for a road trip. That's like, you gotta have it. It's the time.
Yeah, it's my go-to.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about growing up and like you moved around a lot. That's a big premise of this. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my dad was in the Marine Corps when I was growing up until like 2 years ago. He just retired. And so we moved around a lot because that's just kind of the way the Marine Corps does their whole situations. That about every 3 years, you get new orders and you move. And so from the time I was like born, basically, we were kind of moving around like usually about every 3 years. Sometimes it was a little bit longer, sometimes it was a little bit less. And then up until I went to college. And my parents finally just retired, so they just stopped moving too, which is kind of like nice. It's like, okay, there's like one place I can go back and like see them and stuff again. But it was like an interesting experience because like now I look back on it more fondly because I feel like I like gained a lot of experiences from it. But at the time it was kind of weird because you make friends and then you move and like and you go to a new place and then you have the whole like, okay, I have to figure out how all this works. And as soon as you get comfortable, it's like, all right, time to go. But it was cool to see all the different places and stuff.
Can you give us a little timeline of your moving situation?
Yes. So I was born in Bethesda, Maryland. As soon as I was born, we immediately moved to Hawaii and we lived there for 3 years, which was super unfair because I couldn't remember it. And then we started moving boring places after that. And then we moved to Virginia, like Quantico, like right outside of DC for six or 7 months. And then we moved to North Carolina. And at that point we were living at Cherry Point, which was a Marine Corps base. And we lived there for 5 years. My mother and I did. On the 5th year, my dad actually moved to Pennsylvania and they call it like geobatching. He moved by himself so that we could stay in North Carolina for 1 more year because he knew he would only be there for a year. And then when he moved back to North Carolina, we left and moved to Illinois for 3 years, like right outside of St. Louis. Then we moved to Alabama for 3 years. And then I went to college and they moved to North Carolina, but it was a different base. It was Camp Lejeune. And they lived there for 3 years. And then they moved to Huntsville, Alabama, like for themselves. And they retired. That's when they retired. And now they live there.
What of those do you think was your favorite place? And what was your least favorite?
So my favorite, probably because of my friends, my favorite was Illinois. I lived in O'Fallon, Illinois, which was very like 30 minutes outside of St. Louis. And I like some of my best friends and stuff I made there that I'm still like best friends with today. And so I think that would probably be my favorite just because like I had like the best friends there. If I could remember Hawaii, I'm sure I would say that. But my least favorite was definitely Alabama. We lived in Montgomery. I just didn't. It's a very interesting place. There's a lot of, I don't know, there's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of like, they're trying to change a lot of it. And so I feel like there's a lot of tension in that area. And like, it just wasn't. I moved from like a public high school to a magnet high school. So I like, in my head, I was like, I can't wear the same, like I had to wear a uniform there. And it was a really strict high school. It was like a college preparatory magnet school. So like, it was a lot harder than my old high school. And I was like, what is going on? Like I had like all my friends and I was doing all whatever I wanted basically. And now I'm here and I don't know anyone and I'm in a khaki skirt and a polo shirt and I'm not allowed to go to the bathroom during class. Like,
how do you feel about not having like a more traditional hometown?
I think when I was growing up, it bothered me more. I felt like, every time I got comfortable somewhere that I started to like somewhere, we would move. And so like that would bother me because I was like, I feel like this is my like home. And now it's not anymore because we're going to move again. And so that was frustrating. But now like looking back, I feel like I'm able to go with the flow more. Like I like very, very easily was like, okay, this is our home now. This is where we live. And it made me appreciate like home is kind of, it sounds cheesy, but it's like home is like where your people are. And so I feel like I like do feel that way more than like some people do, just because I'm like truly like wherever like my family is where I'm just like, okay, this is my home now. And like that's how I felt in college too. I was like, okay, this is my home now. So I feel like it made me more adaptable.
I guess, yeah, it changes in college, but like more where your parents are because you are an only child. So it's like you all just kind of have each other.
Yeah. And it's funny because like now and I'm at work and stuff and I'll meet people and they'll be like, oh, where are you from? And I'm like, do I give them the whole spiel about like all the places I grew up, or do I just say Alabama? But I like to not say Alabama, so sometimes I mix it up.
Yeah, because really you're not like you lived there for an amount, like you lived all these places the same pretty much amount of time.
Honestly, Ann Arbor, like where I went to college, was the longest I'd lived somewhere in a really long time. Like 4 years was the longest I'd been in one place. And so a lot of times I just say Ann Arbor. If I get to know someone, then obviously I'll go in more and be like, well, I'm not really from Ann Arbor, but I feel like I am.
Right. And it can be tricky with something like that because you're like, oh, I'm from Ann Arbor. And then people are like saying all these things about like Michigan or whatever, and you're like, well, I'm not really from there. Like,
yeah, like,
I don't really
I grew up there.
Like, I kind of do that too because I'm from a small town, so I'll just say like the nearest big town that I think people will have heard of, and then they'll be like, oh, I've been there. Have you been like to this restaurant, to this place? And I'm like, no, I'm not really from there.
It's actually not where I'm from.
Just kidding. So I just kind of had a silly question. Did you ever in these places develop an accent?
I don't think so. But I've had a lot of people tell me that I don't have a Southern accent, but I don't know if I've picked up like maybe not necessarily an accent, but there's like things that I'll say that I picked up from different places. So I feel like I have like a weird, like
just like an amalgamation of all the places that you've been.
Yeah. Because especially like, and part of it has to do with work, because I remember when I was in Michigan and I worked at the hospital, I would be talking to like the patients and stuff, and like I worked with adults, and so they would always like, and they were usually older, and so I got to where I would say things that like were more like Midwestern or like Michigan type phrases. Like I started calling soda pop because that's what they called it, and I'm like, I don't want to have to go through the whole like, well, soda or like Coke. Wait. I'm like, no, just like, do you want to pop or not? And then I come back, like when I came back to my parents, they're like, why are you saying that? I'm like, it's just. Yeah, but then I do a lot of Southern, like I catch myself saying y'all a lot. So I have like like you said, a like mixture of everything.
That's kind of crazy. So, because a lot of times people are like very territorial about that kind of thing. And you're just like, nah, I just know them all. Like,
Yeah, I just have a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
So let's set the scene for a minute. Your dad's a Marine and your mom is a special ed teacher.
Yes.
Or they both were, they're retired, kind of.
Yeah, well, my dad, yeah. So my mom still like she substitute teaches for special ed sometimes, and then my dad's like a defense contractor now, so he's not in the military anymore, but he still does military-esque things.
If you're thinking of it in a more stereotypical kind of sense, if you're a Marine, that's like a pretty intense thing.
Yeah,
And if you're a special ed teacher, it's kind of like a different vibe. Like it's not that it's not intense to be a special ed teacher. I think it definitely is, but it's more like of a nurturing environment, I guess.
yes.
Like they're very opposite. So what was it like growing up with two parents that had such different jobs? Like, do you think that affected your home life?
It's funny because everyone always jokes that my parents are like opposites personality wise too. And so they're like an opposites attract type of situation anyway. But I think it was kind of it ended up being good because I feel like I got like my dad was, you know, very like stoic and like he wanted me to learn like life skills, you know what I mean? Like take me out, like teach me things about like the cars and stuff. When I was younger, like he wanted to make sure that I knew how to like handle a gun like safely and like shoot and like he and I like you said I'm an only child so he didn't have like a son to like who played like sports with because he like tried and I was like no sorry like so like I got like that side of it and then like you said like my mom is a very nurturing woman and so like and my mom and I were very close especially since my dad would have to go on deployment a lot, so it would just be the two of us. And so I was definitely like a mama's girl, but like I feel like I got like both sides of it, which I liked. I feel like I got a good even balance of nurturing and also more of a like I don't know what the word to use is. I keep saying like stoic, like very like like skills type of situation.
It's obviously, yeah, it's obviously a very different I mean, it makes sense because in their jobs, like those are the things that they use, right?
Yeah. I think I got a good work ethic from my dad. He always told me he was like, you can be like dumb, not saying that that he thought I was dumb, but like you can be dumb, but if you work hard, you can get wherever you want to get in life. And I've like kind of taken that through life that I'm like, okay, like if something's really hard, like at least if I'm trying as hard as I can, like I'll get somewhere. I don't know where I'm gonna get, but I'll make some kind of progress.
So speaking of you being an only child and like being close with your mom, can you please tell me or please reiterate the story that you were telling me the other day?
Oh my goodness. So when my dad would go on deployment, and it was when I was pretty young, and I like we talked about, like my parents never like, you know, they kind of were just like, dad's gonna go work overseas. That was kind of the gist that I got. So I was never like sitting at home being like, oh my gosh, like he's going to the war, like he's going to combat, like he's in danger. I never felt that way. And I am an only child and I need constant attention because I always get constant attention. And so when my dad go on deployment, it would be like the middle of the night and I would get bored and I'm like, how can I wake my mother up without getting in trouble? And so I would go wake her up at like 3 a.m. and I'd be like, let's pray for dad. I want to pray for him. And she was like, Julia, it is 3 a.m. And I was like, I want to pray. And like, you can't get mad at me because I'm doing something good. Praying. And I would wake her up and she would be so mad. And she would be like, and she finally would tell me, she was like, you can't wake me up in the middle of the night. Like we can pray for him. We're going to pray during the daytime. And then I started getting more trouble and stuff for this. And I remember telling her, I was like, you can't tell dad. You cannot tell dad that I'm waking up in the middle of the night because he'll get mad at me and I don't get to talk to him that often. And she was like, yeah. And then the next time I call my dad and he's away in Iraq, he answers the phone and he's like, Julia, your mom told me that you've been waking her up in the middle of the night. And I was like, she snitched. And it was such, like, how could you tell him that? And so then I stopped waking her up after that. But
you're like, but dad, I'm praying for you. Come on.
Yeah, I was like, this was for you.
How inventive. You were so bored. You're like, Mom, let's pray. Let's just hang out.
Yeah, I was like, let's hang out. I'm bored. And then it was funny because at the time I like had no concept of time. And my mom would be like, you need to go back to bed. And I'd be like, how long do I need to go back to bed for? Like, when can we play again? And she was like, I couldn't like conceive time. So I just only understood time through how long a Scooby-Doo show was. We call it like, so she'd be like, it's 6 Scooby shows. And I was like, six. I was like, I have to sleep for like 3 hours. It was awful.
That's hilarious. I love that. I think it's like that's a really fun. You would be surprised the things that kids can come up with to get their way.
Yeah.
It's so funny. My little cousin, she's 4, and whenever you tell her if she wants to do something, you're like, oh no, like we can't do that. I mean, it's usually something that like a little kid shouldn't do, like I don't know, like ride a big kid's bike or something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And she'll be like, hold on a second, I have a big idea. And then she'll just repeat what she just said, but in a different way so that it sounds like a newer, better
They're
idea.
smart. They
I
know.
know, they know what's up.
Yeah.
So you didn't really have any sense of when he was gone, you didn't really know what was going on.
Not really. Like they like I knew he was going like to Iraq, but like I didn't really have like a big concept of like what was going on like there or like the war. Because I was only I think the oldest I was when he went on deployment, I was in the fourth grade, like the last time he went. And so I wasn't like super well informed about the whole like situation, which was probably for the best because I remember the last time he went, they would do these videos and like they would make a DVD and like send them back to like all the families and stuff. And it was just pictures of them and like little snippets of videos and stuff of them on base wherever they were at the time. And I had never like seen pictures of it before until then. And I remember they showed us and it wasn't like scary at all. Like it wasn't, but it was like in the, the desert and you could tell it was out in the middle of nowhere. And it was not like a super nice base that they were staying at. So like they were, and I remember like the pictures, like he was pretty dirty and like they were out there alone. And it scared me so bad. And I was like, that's where he is. I was like, what are you? I thought he was just, I don't know. I was like imagining him in like an office space, like typing on a computer, which is like not what he was doing. And so it was like, and then my mom had to like talk me down. She's like, it's okay. Like everything's fine. I was like, he's out there alone. But I was like, it's probably a good decision to not tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like there are some things you shouldn't tell kids, you know?
No, definitely.
Moving around so much, I don't know. I think when I imagine someone doing that, it seems like you'd be very open to like most things. You'd be very open-minded and like just because you've been in so many different places with so many different types of people. Is that your experience, or do you think it depends where you're living, kind of that kind of like shapes the way that you think? Or is it just kind of, I don't know, because I think when you're from a place, you tend to think the way that place thinks until you leave and can kind of see other things. So what's your experience with that?
I agree that like it kind of made me a more open-minded person. And I think that like the more that because when I was younger, we lived in North Carolina for a while and stuff, and we were in more like southern areas that were like a little bit more conservative minded. And then when we moved to Illinois, and I was like starting middle school and like a little bit of high school and stuff. And I started kind of getting to that age where you start like forming your own independent thought. I started becoming much more open-minded. And I was meeting so many different types of people in Illinois versus like in North Carolina. It was like I was living a much more sheltered life and there was not like a very diverse group of people living there. And so I think it helped me like, especially because I went to Illinois and I feel like I kind of like formed my own thoughts on like my like kind of worldview and like met like-minded friends and like learned more about like the world. And then I was only in high school, but then when I went to Alabama, that's a much more like closed-minded space. And I was kind of able to be like, no, like I know what I believe personally. Like all these people can be like around me saying like things that like are, at times really racist and classist and sexist. And I'm like, I know, like I have friends that don't feel this way. I like have a good set of morals. Like my parents are good people. I feel like it made it easier for me to go other places and hear people say things I didn't agree with and be like, I can exist in this space and still have my own free thought and like be a good person.
I don't think you're going to be able to answer this question, but just your thought on it is, since you lived in Illinois at kind of a more formative time, like a time when people do form a lot of opinions and stuff, do you think if it would have been reversed and you lived somewhere like Alabama, let's say, first and then moved to Illinois, that you would have thought differently?
I don't know. I would have liked to think that like at my core, like I would have like still been able to like,
Yeah.
kind of like
I'm not
form opinion. No, I don't mean it. I wasn't saying it to your question, but like you're right. Cause I do kind of wonder sometimes I'm like, if I had never moved anywhere outside of like very like more rural places too, because I had never until we moved to Illinois, we lived in a very rural area of North Carolina where there's nothing wrong with that. But I was like, I'm like, I would never have like seen like large groups of people until like truly like college. And I'm just like, would I have been like a very different person? Like, you know what I mean? Just like, and like, not even just in like my ways of thought, but like, I wonder if I would have been like way shyer and like more like introverted. I do wonder sometimes, like, if we had lived in different places, like, would my personality be different?
Yeah, because when we met, I was wondering that same thing about you as well, or just people kind of in your situation. When we met, I was like, "Oh, you seem very outgoing. Like you seem perfectly like comfortable wherever you are." And I was curious if you think that has more to do with just your personality or if you think it has to do with your upbringing.
I kind of think it honestly is more to do with like my upbringing, like moving around and stuff. Because when I was a kid, I was very introverted and I was very like, I was more shy and stuff. And then I think I started realizing like the more we moved that it's like I have to like put myself out there, especially in when we moved in high school, like people like have already made a lot of friends. Like when I moved like the second time to Alabama, like people already had their own friend groups. They already were like they didn't need more friends and they didn't need like the new girl to come in and like be there. I was like, I have to do this on my own. Like I need to like put myself out and like try and stuff, and it kind of like forced me to do it, and it made me I think I just ended up becoming more like extroverted the older I've gotten too, because I think I read somewhere that the definition of an introvert versus an extrovert is like introverts, they feel rejuvenated by being alone versus extroverts are like rejuvenated by being around people. And I do think like the older I get, and part of this has to be with being an only child too, I think I like want to be around people and like I feel better when I'm like around people. I think it's probably just because I've had enough of being alone. I've done it plenty.
I guess, yeah, how much importance do you place on your friendships?
I feel like I have them very, I feel like my friendships are the most important thing to me, especially, and a lot of that has to do with being an only child, but also like moving around. I had to put a lot of like effort into staying friends with people that I cared about, like after I moved. And I like am very proud of like how my friends and I have like really worked to like stay friends, like when we're not together, because a lot of my friendships are long distance friendships and they're some of my like closest and like best friendships, and so it's like a very big part of my life, and I feel like I try to devote a lot of time into like maintaining friends that I've met from like different places and like that I don't get to live with all the time.
Do you have like how do you become friends with people so quickly? Do you have like a one liner? Are you just like, here I am, this is me, like, do you want to be my friend?
I don't I don't know. I don't even know if I would say I make friends quickly, but I try to. I feel like though I've gotten more to where if I meet someone and I like them, I am like I'll just be like, let's get lunch, or like, do you want to get like, you know, do you want to go get coffee? Do you want to get dinner? Like I try to like make plans with people as much as I can and like stay busy. And then I feel like, you know, if people are compatible, you probably like after that you kind of start to just like have similar interests. Hopefully you have similar interests. So, you know what I mean? Like, and then you can kind of just go from there. But I feel like it's also weird because it's up until like post grad, you just like are with people all the time. Like in high school and college and stuff, like it wasn't like a lot of work to like make friends because you're like constantly around other people. And I feel like post grad now I'm like, oh my gosh, I really have to work like to like meet new people like at work and like spend time with people like outside of work. It's like it's hard.
Do you, so you after college moved again to Tennessee. Do you want to keep moving around a lot, or have you kind of like decided that at some point you want to just settle down somewhere?
I'm very interested in like travel nursing, and I think it would be a cool way to get to see a lot of places and like try a bunch of places out without having to like commit to anything. So I'm very like interested in doing that. I've lived in Tennessee now for it'll be 3 years. Well, I've lived here for 2 years now. And like we just signed our lease, so I'll live here for 3 years. I'll be staying. But I like it and I've like wanted to stay. But I do like I feel like I'm reaching that time where now in my head I'm just naturally like, oh, okay, it's time to go to the next place. But I'm like, that doesn't necessarily, I love Nashville and I think that I would like want to see other places. I think in my head, my favorite place I've like ever lived was Ann Arbor. Like I just loved it there so much that like in my head I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go try all these new places. I'm gonna go live and see like different parts of the country. And I would love to go like outside of the country too. But then like one day when I like hypothetically have like a family and I'm gonna like settle down, I would want to do it in Ann Arbor probably. It's like my dream life. This is kind of like, oh, every day I probably would say something different. So
Okay. Do you think it's funny that you're going to be living in Nashville for 3 years, the same way you lived everywhere for 3 years?
I do wonder because, and I haven't like officially decided that I won't live in Nashville for another year and stuff, but like I've been kind of thinking more and more, like my friends have been like, oh, like what if we travel nurse and stuff? So I'm like, okay, like that's like a really cool idea to me. But it is kind of, I wonder if it's like my like internal clock is like ticking, being like, okay, you like this, it feels natural to go at this, like at a 3 year mark. But it's also like, I know, like I feel like while I'm young and while I don't have like a family that I need to like stay in one place for, I'm like, I should go see places while I have time, and like while I don't have any like responsibilities to like, other like people or animals or children.
Right, right, right. Do you have any advice for people that have been in the same situation? Maybe they're having a hard time making friends. Maybe it's just, I don't know, that's a lot. That's a lot for a kid to have to move around that much and like, like it is a sacrifice for a kid to have to do all that stuff as well. So, what is your advice for that?
Yeah, I think if I was to give advice to a kid that's moving around a lot now, I would probably say I always thought the hardest part was the summer because we'd always move in the summer. And then you're not in school. And I would be like, how am I supposed to meet people? Like, and my parents are always like, oh, go play with your friends. I'm like, I don't have friends. Like we just moved here. Like I don't have classes. I don't know a soul here. It was helpful to like join, like, especially when you're a kid, if you like join like the Y or something, or like where you can go play like sports or do something in the summer, or like there's like clubs and stuff now. I feel like that would be helpful. And then like when you get to school, like I was saying, like just try and like ask people if they want to hang out later. Like everyone wants to, especially in high school and middle school. I feel like all I wanted to do was like be asked to hang out. So I feel like it's like, just ask someone to go to dinner or just sit down next to someone at lunch. That was also the other worst part, is whenever the first day of school, you're like, I don't know anyone here and I have to sit somewhere at lunch. So I was always like scheming, like my first couple classes of the day, I'm like, I need to make a friend so I can be like, okay, when's your lunch period? I'm sitting with you.
Oh, yeah, that would be terrible. Oh my gosh, you go in there, you're like 12 years old, you don't have anyone to sit with.
I ate a couple lunches in the bathroom. I did one or two where I was like, I'm not doing this today. I'm just gonna go sit by myself and eat my lunch, and I'll make a friend in a week and I'll sit with them then. I was like, I'm gonna call it early. Don't do that. Go at least go sit with a teacher or something.
When you like, that's like the like a scary part is if you sometimes don't find someone to sit with or whatever it is, like it doesn't even have to be lunch, but like sometimes if you're new and you don't make a friend the first day, then it's like almost kind of like you missed it.
Yeah, it felt like there's like a window closing in. But then I feel like that everyone feels that way. And it's like someone has to be the one to break the ice and be like, okay, like, hi, my name's Julia. Like, do you want to like, like ask questions? And in high school, you have like built in, and middle school, you have like built in excuses to talk to people. You can be like, oh, like, I don't understand the homework. Like, do you like, you know what I mean? Like, you can use like the fact that you guys have to be at this place to like get along and like have something in common, which I think is helpful. Cause then like when I went to college, I was like, this is so much easier. Like everyone's everywhere. And like, I feel like it's much easier to be alone in college. Like I felt very comfortable going to the dining hall and just getting breakfast by myself. And like I was very lucky that I like lived in a dorm that was very open. So like random people would just sit down next to me in the dining hall and be like, hey, I met one of my friends in nursing school. She's like, hi, I'm Lucy. Like, what is your major? And I was like, I'm nursing. And she's like, I'm nursing. And I was like, we're like, now we're friends. Like it was just like very
Yes.
easy. Like, yeah, I was like, that was great. Like that was, so I feel like it's just like a situational thing. I don't know. It's hard. I feel like also I was like not one of those people that was like meant to like exist in like high school. Like I was like, I gotta go. Like, and I feel like some people have an easier time in that space anyway. So everyone's different. It gets better.
I think it's so interesting to hear from other people that live other like because I'm from such a small place where, to be honest, like not a lot of people leave. So I think it's so interesting to hear from people that have the complete opposite experience.
Yeah, it's fun to like I love going to people's like hometowns and stuff. Like when I was in college, I was like, oh my gosh. And like they'd always show me like their whole like they're like, I went here for middle school and here for elementary school and here for high school. And I'm like, this is so nice. You just like live here. Like this is like this is where you live. You're like,
it's just all right
like,
here.
Yeah, like this is so nice. But like I do love getting to like see people's like where people grew up, because I'm like, it's so cool to like, I think it would be very cool to get to live somewhere and be like, I like know this place inside and out, because I can't really say that I feel that way about many places.
It's like an intimate look at like their life and what makes them them. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
That's true. Yeah, and it has to feel like you have like a safe space, like that you're like, this is my home base, like this is somewhere that I know really well, like I am safe here.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and for being on here. I had a great time talking to you.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks so much again to Julia for being a guest on the show today. If you have a story you want to personally share on the show, want to be read on air, or a topic you'd like to see discussed, find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at justapersonpod, or send us an email at justapersonpod@gmail.com. And we'll see you next Monday with another new episode.